In the last video, we refactored our request struct to add on the approval count and approvals mappings fields. Now, there's one quick thing that we missed in that last video when we did that refactor. If you scroll on down to the create request function, you'll notice that we now have an error on line 35 or so. And it says that we have the wrong number of arguments being provided to the request struct. Remember that every time we create an instance of a struct, we have to initialize every field of the struct. So because we added that approval count property, we have to add it to our list of fields here. So I'm going to add on approval count and initialize it to the value 0. Now you're probably very quickly curious why we did not have to also initialize the approvals field. There's a very good reason for that. When we initialize properties of a struct, we only have to initialize the value types. So these are all value types right here. We do not have to add any code to initialize a reference type, and a mapping is a reference type. So we don't have to add this to the line where we create the new request. Before we move on, there's something quick I want to mention about the approval count number right here, because I realized I wasn't entirely clear on exactly why it exists when we added it in the last video. All along in this contract so far, we've been saying that people have to vote yes or vote no to a particular spending request. So we've been saying either you say yes or you say no. However, for the actual implementation, we don't actually have to keep track of the number of people who vote no. When we eventually add some logic to decide whether or not a spending request is ready to be dispersed to the vendor, we are really only going to compare the number of yes votes against the total possible number of votes inside of a contract. So we don't have to actually include the number of no votes in that. Essentially, not voting at all is equivalent to a no vote. All we are really looking for is some minimum amount of consensus from our contributors, some minimum number of people who are saying, yep, it looks good to me, send this out. So really, we don't need any difference between voting no and not voting at all. So because of that, our request struct is only going to record the number of people who vote yes. You're not going to call our approve request function. Remember, that's what we are about to write. So when you call our approve request, that is specifically to vote yes on a request. And we're going to have no other function that allows you to vote no or anything like that. Okay, so now that is a little bit more clear, let's continue in the next section where we are going to finally put together the approve request function.